I recently moved into an apartment close to my workplace in the city. It's a garden-level apartment that faces a parking garage for the city's education department, and a patio-like section of foliage, trees, and leaves. Connected to this patio is the alleyway. I've been living here for 2 months, and the apartment itself is pretty quiet. Most of the tenants are just normal blue-collar folk, grad students and hipsters basically. Nothing crazy or weird living here. A needle exchange opened up basically across the alleyway this summer and has attracted unsavory characters. In the US, needle exchanges are extremely controversial and are only allowed in several states. Many of them have been hanging around the back of the alleyway and pooping and peeing out there. The leasing office and landlord of the building is trying to get the city to help with this problem. My first encounter with these peeping, druggy toms was one Saturday morning. I awoke to hear all this moaning and groaning from outside the patio tree area. When I opened my eyes and peeped outside, I saw a guy completely high on something, sharpening sticks right outside of my window. I was super scared but didn't know if he saw me because I quickly hid under my kitchen table and called non-emergency police. And they sent someone out to investigate like 30 minutes later, and when the cop car appeared, he moaned out and walked away from the scene before they got to the patio area. The second time was me sleeping the night before work. It was literally the night of my birthday. I heard pounding at my window at around 11 p.m. and I awoke to it. I had my window slightly cracked open to let cool air in. I don't have air conditioning. And I heard the sound of rap music coming from either a small speaker or a phone. I originally thought the pounding was from a neighbor or upstairs, but then I realized that the pounding was coming from the window behind me. It got worse and worse with accompanying moaning and blaring rap music. I called the non-emergency police and they told me they would send someone out and to take a look. And this continued for another 15 minutes and I had to go to the bathroom desperately. I couldn't just sit there and hide in my bed. I crawled to my kitchen, got a knife and went to the bathroom. I figured the burglar bars on my apartment window would deter the pounding. The pounding stopped when I came out of the bathroom. It got almost too quiet. Something about the vibes, the feeling just didn't feel right. I decided, I don't know why still, to peek through the blind slats and I shined my phone flashlight through them. What I saw was the guy's face staring right through me in the blinds. It was horrific. The pupils were completely dilated like a cat, almost, and he could see me and the knife. He pounded right back at me through the burglar blinds and screamed, "I'm going to kill you." I don't know what he was on, but he was extremely aggressive and he seemed invincible to it. I got so scared and was in a ton of shock that I shut the crack while he was continuing to pound and turned up his rap music. I ended up crawling back down to my low-lying bed and calling the police. What ended up happening was the cops came once again, about 30 minutes later or so. When they came, I heard the guy moaning in alarm and I saw him running off as I peeked through the blinds on a BMX bicycle. When I talked to the cops, they were more concerned about how he looked like than what he did, and seemed overall unconcerned and not very reassuring. I ended up missing work, not getting much sleep, and having to spend half the day recuperating during my birthday. My solution now is shutting the blinds tighter and closing the window at night, and trying to use the cooler and fans before nightfall. I'm also thinking about getting curtains to pull over the blinds, but overall I feel like this is challenging due to the heat and not having AC. I want to stay cool and the night breeze really helps, but it's tricky because there are creeps outside. When I told my boss that I wasn't coming into work the following day, he recommended that I seek a room at a higher ground. I don't know if that will help and possibly it could be more dangerous, since there are no burglar bars on the first floor and above while my garden level does and really is what saved my butt from that guy bursting in and wanting to kill me. I'm an extremely frightened chick from this experience and I've gotten more paranoid since, My boyfriend has been really kind this past weekend. This happened on a Thursday night, and offered to stay over more. Since then, it's been quiet, but I heard someone last night yelling outside so loud that I could hear it through the shut window. I feel like the cops have not been helpful and they don't take this seriously. In college, there was an adult student I knew who participated in some of the meetings hosted by a scholarship program that I was in. He was a very well-known musician on campus. I didn't know him well, but we were acquaintances. We were friendly on campus, and I think one time he came by my apartment and a large group of people to have some drinks. He seemed quirky, but nothing about him seemed wrong or bad. Until I ran into him at a 24/7 grocery store just off campus one Saturday night. I was there with my boyfriend and some friends, and since we were friendly, I said hi and asked him how he was. He was drunk, very, very drunk. As we're talking, he breaks down, professing how much and how long he had been interested in me, and saying how inappropriate it was since I was in a relationship, and he repeated this for about 20 minutes. He also talked about problems in his family. This happened about 3 years ago, so I don't remember all the details, but I'm pretty sure one family member had killed another, and other sorts of crazy stuff. I was a little stunned into silence about all of this, because having a drunk man crying and professing an interest in me in a grocery store around midnight was not what I expected when I said hi to a guy that I barely knew. But nonetheless, I stood there and was supportive. I told him that he was right. I was in a relationship, so there wasn't a chance for him, and mostly just nodded along and told him that he was a good human being and shouldn't be hard on himself. But then it got weird. He told me that one night he came by my apartment. He found the door unlocked, so he had walked inside. He wanted to see me, to come into my room, but he couldn't remember which of the 3 bedrooms was mine. He stood in the common space for a little while, but decided to leave instead of guessing at the doors. He told me that it was probably a good thing that he couldn't remember which room was mine, because he really wanted to be with me that night, and if he had remembered which room was mine, he would have come in. And if he came in, he doesn't think he would have been able to stop himself and would have forced himself on me. That was his description. At some point in the conversation, although I don't recall if it was before or after his confession of coming into my home, he leaned in to kiss me. I turned so he only got my cheek. I was so stunned through all of this that I didn't know how to leave. My boyfriend at the time saw him try to kiss me, and initially got upset about it and walked away. I think he did eventually come back and rescue me from that conversation. The next day, I got a message from him on Facebook. I have cut out some filler, but the message is still there. Wow, I can't believe what happened last night. I was crying. There is something about you that I love, but I hold back in fear of a broken heart. All the things I said that night were true. I would love to hang out with you, but I know I would want to touch you, and again, you have a boyfriend. That wouldn't be fair to either of us. Sorry for all the misspelled words. I don't care about that. As you know, I'm a music guy, so words don't mean that much, and it's funny if we misspell them. I'm going to stop typing now. Take care. Peace, love, respect, always. Respect that he may come into my bedroom while I'm asleep and force himself on me. I talked to a staff member in my scholarship program to explain that I didn't feel safe around this guy, and to please help that there wouldn't be any situations where the 2 of us were alone together. And up until last week, I haven't thought about him in over 2 years. But last week, he sent me a message wishing me a happy birthday. I was kind of shocked that I hadn't removed him as a friend on Facebook considering how creepy he is. So today, I went to remove him. Turns out I had. Over 2 years ago, around the time that I graduated. When you're not friends, you don't get reminders of people's birthdays, so he had to have memorized it. He's blocked now. So please, let's never meet again. In my bedroom, in my home, in a grocery store, or anywhere else. It was New Year's Eve, my birthday, and myself and two of my friends were out in the front of my house listening to music on my iPod. We were about 12 at the time and there was no one else around. It was probably 10 or 10:30 at night and we were waiting for the illegal fireworks to light up down the street. It happened every year at this time. It probably sounds a little weird. 12-year-old kids by themselves at 10:30 p.m. listening to Katy Perry in the middle of the street. But it wasn't too unusual. See, my neighborhood is very close and we all know all of our neighbors really well. So our parents who were in the house and ourselves weren't at all concerned. We were listening to Hot and Cold by Katy Perry. Yes, it was that time of the decade, and we were jamming along to it when we began to hear a whistle. Now, first off, it sounded like it was part of the song, so initially everyone ignored it. But that was until it started to distort and go out of rhythm to the music playing. It didn't seem to be in tune with the song, and it was eerily out of pitch. I don't know why, maybe to hear it better, but my friend decided to pause the music. Maybe it was just in the song, or maybe the phone was glitching. As soon as the music stopped, the whistling continued, pitchy and slow. We were all a little bit spooked and it was dark outside. Other than the few streetlights on the road, we couldn't really see much or make out much of the darkness other than the strange whistling. We were able to pinpoint the direction it was coming from soon enough. We turned towards it and froze. About 10 meters from where we stood, just on the edge of the street lamp's light, was a man. He looked quite disheveled, most likely homeless, and he was just standing there, looking at us, whistling that godforsaken, pitchy whistle. We were all frozen for a while as I guess we were caught off guard, until my fight or flight kicked in. I yelled at my friends to get inside and they began to scream and run up the driveway. I pushed and shoved them forward, terrified because I don't know whether they could hear what I was hearing. But the whistling had finally stopped, but something else was drowning out the silence. Heavy-setted footsteps. He was chasing after us. I screamed bloody murder at them, opening the front door and shoving them inside, not caring if I hurt them. I turned and slammed the deadbolt just as he had reached the screen door. I watched as his figure came into view. He was dirty, wearing soiled long-sleeve clothing, had an unkempt beard and wore a torn beanie. As I closed the door, he stopped just ahead of the screen, looked me dead in the eye, and murmured something that still makes my skin crawl. Damn it. One of my friends consoled the other, who was now in tears, as I watched him through the peephole. He lingered for a second more and then disappeared into the blackness. I remember my friends grabbing me, asking if I was okay, and then pointing down to my hands. I was shaking like a leaf. We never told our parents. That was over 10 years ago, and it still gives me the heebie-jeebies to think what would have happened if we hadn't noticed the out-of-place whistling. This happened to me when I was a kid, and it is probably one of the creepiest stories I have to tell. I think I was about 9 or 10 when this happened. It was definitely my birthday because we had the party at a nearby park. I think that it had been raining, but I was still excited that it was my birthday. We all had a good time, and me and my brother opened our presents and ate our cake. The only day kids loved as much as their birthday is Christmas, and I was really happy with all the presents that my friends had gotten me. By the time the party was over, it had stopped raining, and the sun was starting to come out. We picked up everything and put the presents in the car, and then we started to drive back home. The exit to the rather large park that we had been at goes through this big fancy metal gate and opens out to a circular intersection. We pulled into the intersection and took a left turn towards the state highway. This might be important later. Everything seemed normal at first, until we stopped at a crosswalk down the road from my street. I noticed my dad looking into the rearview mirror, and he muttered something to my mom. We kept driving and turned down my street and then into my driveway. I unbuckled and turned around to see what was the matter. I watched as my dad walked to a red car, maybe a sedan or a Prius, and spoke to the lady driving it. We all watched as she sped away. I remember getting really scared, and my mom brought me and my brothers inside while my dad had called the cops. An officer arrived at our house shortly, and my dad told me what had happened. Apparently, when we had stopped at the crosswalk, he noticed the lady in the car behind ours filming us. He watched to see if she followed us, and when she did, of course. When we got home and he approached her, all she said was, "I got what I wanted." The officer assured us that a lot of people like to film these stuff around them, as this was the time when cameras like GoPros were becoming popular. To this day, I'm still not sure why exactly that lady filmed us. Maybe we had cut her off at the intersection, or she didn't notice us stopping at the light ahead, braking just in time to prevent a fender bender or blaming it on us. We never really heard anything of her again. But I know this sounds cheesy, but it's the truth. I sometimes wonder if she'll come back. So, to the creepy lady who filmed my family on my birthday, let's not meet. I was about 7 years old, my brother about 10. It was well past our bedtime when our mom woke up off the couch to put us to bed. Our dad worked construction out of town back then, so it was often just the three of us at the house for weeks at a time. Up the stairs and to the immediate right was our parents' bedroom. Going left put you in the middle of a hallway. Taking another left led down that hallway to my brother's room. The opposite end was my room, which was also across the hall from our upstairs bathroom. At either end of the hallway are windowed doors we always kept locked and rarely used. The door on my end led to a balcony overlooking our front yard, and the door on my brother's end opened to our back porch. The house kind of leans into a small hill. My brother and mom both had a habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I only knew this because I was always a light sleeper, and they just couldn't help flushing with the door wide open. This night, however, my brother stopped on his way to his room and came back towards the bathroom. "I'm gonna try to pee before I go to bed. The past few nights I've been too afraid to walk to the bathroom. I keep seeing a man wearing stripes at the end of the hallway." I don't know if my mom wrote it off as my brother telling ghost stories to try and scare me, or if she was already half asleep and didn't catch it, but she didn't react at all to my brother's confession. I, on the other hand, was terrified by it. The fear of seeing a ghost like that at the end of the hallway or through the windows is the reason I started running from the stairs to my bedroom at night. Years later, when I was about 18, my mom and I were having a conversation in her car about a dog that we had for a very short time when I was little. We were sharing stories about Max's tendency towards destroying my shoes and other unruly behaviors when my mom blurted out, "Do you remember that time I opened the front door for the cops and Max ran inside to the kitchen and started tearing open that big bag of dog food that we had?" This really caught me by surprise because in all the years that I lived in that house, we never once called the cops. I asked her what she was talking about, and she looked equally surprised, as if she had just revealed something by accident. "Oh, that's right, I never told you because you were too young at the time. One night, I woke up hearing noises outside my window, and when I looked, I saw a man staring into my bedroom." She went on to describe how turning on the lights caused him to take off running, and how she grabbed my dad's pistol before calling the cops. I can't remember all the details I gave them when they showed up. A tall white male wearing a striped shirt and jeans, short dark hair, something like that. They said it matched the description of a man that they were looking for in the area. It turns out that he had escaped from jail on a murder charge. Now, I know it sounds so obvious hearing those two stories back to back, but it wasn't until a few years ago in my mid-20s that I pieced together that my brother had unknowingly warned us about a murderer who spent multiple nights casing our home.